Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Inkwell Academy. My name is Sophia Wardell, and today we have a very special guest, award winning romance author Linda Hughes. Linda is the author of 27 novels, including many series and novellas. Readers describe her novels as heartwarming, inspiring, and binge worthy, with a blend of history, present day events, romance, suspense, and humor all rolled into one. Her stories captivate emotions and feed readers' souls. Thanks for joining us today, Linda.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here, Sophia. Thanks for having me.
Of course, we're so happy to have you. And today I'm excited. I've been looking forward to this because I want to talk all about writing women's romantic fiction with you. So, I want to start off with a big question that I feel like a lot of authors do not know. What is the difference between the romantic genre and women's romantic fiction?
That's a great question because when I first started writing, somebody asked me that question and I said, I don't know. I'm writing, but I'm not sure what it is. But the difference is very finite. And that is when you're writing romance, the focus is always on the love story, the relationship between the man and the woman. And that's the whole story, basically, their ups and their downs. In women's romantic fiction, well, let me just say women's fiction first, is all about the woman's journey. It's how she learns, how she grows, and how she comes into herself during the story. When you add romance to that, there's the side story of love, but that's not the main focus. Most of us, however, who write women's romantic fiction, we love that happily ever after, that HEA that you always get in pure
Right.
romance. So we usually add that in as well.
Well, that's great. That's very interesting. And there is a distinct difference. And so when you're incorporating all of these elements, how do you necessarily combine history, romance, suspense, and humor? And how much of a dose of each one would you say that you have?
It's interesting that it seems to happen very naturally as I'm
Mm,
writing. And I think it's probably true for most writers. And that is when you think about how real life works, it is a combination of all of those things. And one minute you're up and everything's going great. And then the next minute something happens and you take a little fall. And the history ties into it because we remember that people in all ages, all times have felt these very same things. I love to do stories about ancestry quests, is what I call them. So it's a woman who's discovered some things about her ancestry that she never knew. Of course, along the way, she's going to meet a guy, but she's doing this research. And so the history just naturally ties in. And what she learns along the way is that people have felt these same things, had these same kinds of problems, and have worked their way through. They have somehow prevailed. And if they can do it, she can too. So you can see how all of that just sort of naturally flows together.
Yeah, it's a great concept, an idea for an author that is really trying to get into not just the romance genre, but a woman's romantic fiction where, you're learning and you're growing about yourself. And so to go back to history or have some of those ties where they can learn and grow, it's a great way to, kind of launch yourself into that genre. And you mentioned that your happy endings aren't quite as expected, but better. And so could you tell us how, an author could twist the typical romance ending to bring more to a romantic side of the story?
Now, that's quite a promise, isn't it? It's better than usual because there's some wonderful HEAs out there. But I like to always do the unexpected. And
Mm,
for example, I might do a wedding scene where uh, she's been learning about her ancestry and she turns around, she's saying her vows, and she realizes the ancestors are there. Nobody else can see them, but she knows they're there. Or I did one recently where I loved this, where the readers were in on this and the woman getting married was in on it, but nobody else knew what was going to happen. And that is she had found out that her fiance had cheated on her. And so she was having what she called a wedding funeral. So she pretended she was going through all the moves, and then she got up there and changed the vows to smack them with the flowers and leave. And I had so much fun with that because I think there are women who wanted to do that at
yeah,
times.
and don't
And they
actually
go
do
like,
it.
yeah. Yeah, here we are. I don't dare do it. My parents spent $40,000, but uh, I had so much fun with that kind of thing. So I'd like to give it a twist. It might even be the dog, the family dog, riding in on the bride's veil, but it's always something a little bit different.
When I like that because it really plays on the humor aspect as well, where there are so many things that you think in your head that maybe you won't necessarily do. And I think authors are allowed to create a
Yeah.
story where those things actually happen, where you can
Yep,
live
yep.
vicariously through this person that you relate to in the story. Like, oh, how funny would it have been if I did that? And you know, I also love that you touched on how important a sense of adventure is. How can an author develop a romantic relationship, but an exciting setting that creates more of an escape for readers?
I think today it's easier for authors to do that than in the past. Because of course we have all the resources in the world available to us to find out what different places are like and different events that go on and the kinds of people that maybe we've never met. I had the advantage of having a job for 20 years where I traveled all over the world. And I
Mm.
met all the time. And I met people that just were so fantastic. And I always said they learned not nearly as much from me as I learned from them. And it was my job to teach them things. And so I bring as much of that into my stories as I can and all of those adventures that I had. But we can go online today and have adventures as well. So it's pretty easy. It's easier than it was in the past to bring that into it. I once took a workshop with Donald Moss. He's a wonderful author and workshop leader for authors. And he said, and in terms of adventure, I always think of this. He said, never take your character to the cliff and just have them look over the edge
Mm.
and back. He said, push them off. Push them off and let them figure out what they have to do now. And I've always kept that in mind. That's what I try to do.
And I just want to close with what advice would you have for authors that are essentially looking to create a romance novel that is binge worthy, but also heartwarming?
I think what makes something binge worthy is when the reader feels emotionally connected to the characters, at least
Mm.
one of the characters, hopefully the main character, the protagonist. And it's that connection that makes them want to know what happened to that person. And they want to know what's going to happen next. And if there's another book, they want to read that one too. They want to follow that person or that family. And so that's what binge worthy is. And so that emotional connection, I believe, is made by making the character have some flaws that they can overcome. Some of those flaws can be fun, but make them real people. Give them dialogue that is the way that people really talk. Uh, don't, for example, run your whole book through a program that makes sure everything is perfect because that's not how people talk. And so
Right.
the characters come off as robots. Keep your characters real. Give them some flaws. Let the reader say, oh, yeah, just like you said earlier, the reader can go, oh, yeah, I wish I would have done that. And that makes a book binge worthy.
Well, Linda, thank you so much. That was wonderful insight on writing women's romantic fiction.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Lastly, where can our listeners find and connect with you?
I am everywhere, as most of us authors are these days. And so my website is very simple, www.lindahughes, HUGHES.com. It's my name. That's it.
That's all the time we have for today. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into today's interview with best-selling and award-winning romance author Linda Hughes. Be sure to check out our website for more videos. Wishing you all a fulfilling and successful writing journey.